Hello, New Zealand. I think it's episode number 27. I need to just go back and check my notes. I was doing that just as the music was coming in. Simon, you might have some idea. Is it 26 or 27? But we should have been cancelled in episode 7.
Yeah, probably should have been cancelled in episode 7. Remarkable that we're over 25. Let's just say that. I don't know if it's 26 or 7 either.
Okay, look, let's get straight into it because we have got a lot to get through. And the first one is... finally, the media get it. There's been a lot of discussion. Actually, Simon, have you seen this Netflix documentary, Adolescence, that everybody's talking about?
I haven't. I must admit I've been watching the Drive to Survive, the Formula One series, but I need to get to this. It's probably part of my work, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Liam Lawson needs protection because he's been treated very badly. But anyway, that's another topic. Anyway, Paddy Gower has obviously watched Adolescence, which is a 4-hour thing. I actually watched the first 2 hours last night. So no spoiler alerts, thank you. But, you know, he's saying we must take action over kids and smartphones. And look, Simon, I just sort of think, wow, they're finally actually catching up because last year, obviously, at our conference, we had Jonathan Haidt from the author of The Anxious Generation, who's concerned that our kids are being raised in a play-based, not in a play-based childhood, but in a screen-based childhood. And, of course, last year, we put out this media release, 2024, saying there was public support for a phone ban in schools. And then, can you see that date, Simon? Hang on, let me just enlarge it for you because you're wearing glasses. 2015, we were calling for screen time guidelines, and that was on the basis that I think the Ministry of Health was saying that the maximum for children outside using screens was 2 hours per day, but they weren't taking into account the whole screen time that kids were being encouraged at school as part of learning. And so we're starting to see the outcome,
just goes to show, Bob, you've been ahead of the curve. Well, you've just been ahead of the curve. I mean, that's something I think, you know, I'm newer to your team, but, you know, people would acknowledge a lot of your research is ahead of the curve. So it's great to see Paddy's finally caught up after, 10 years?
Okay, well, speaking of catching up, let's get into what was theoretically our first topic. And of course, it's the one that everybody's talking about at the moment. And there's been some new developments even as we were preparing for this program. So, look, a little bit of background and then I'll get you to comment on it. Simon, I'm sure you've got a few things to say. So we start off firstly with Green MP, one of our favourite Green MPs, Tamitha Paul, who we've highlighted before, doing a TikTok where she uses very foul language. And then also previously she said that the only people in prison were non-violent people, which of course is totally false. And then she went to a public... Now on Monday night at Straight Talk, we actually highlighted that she was going to Canterbury University, I think it was Canterbury University, and she was going to talk about basically defunding the police. And while she was there, she made these comments.
Like, some people do not want to see police officers everywhere, and for a lot of people, it makes them feel less safe.
She is totally wrong, and the Greens are in la-la land on law and order.
Tamitha Paul's comments were ill-informed, were unwise, and in fact were stupid.
It's just weird, to be honest.
What Tamitha was expressing are the sentiments that she has heard from constituents.
Okay, well, in fairness to Tamitha Paul, who obviously we've got a lot of time for, Simon, let's just hear her in context of what she got the opportunity to explain it. And to be honest, I listened to this interview with Jenna Lynch, and I tell you what, it was a softball, really nice interview from Jenna Lynch. If it had been any other party, Jenna Lynch would have been in like a robber's dog, but no, it was a very nice, soft interview. But this is what Tamitha Paul had to say. Now, the only problem is, as you listen to this, she actually shoots herself in the foot a number of times.
Yeah, so one of the big complaints I heard last year especially was around beat patrols just picking up homeless people's stuff and putting it in the bin. When I inquired about it, they said that that was because it was a Wellington City Council bylaw, and I don't think that that should be what they're dedicating their resource towards. I think that the police should be responding to incidences of domestic violence, sexual violence, things that only they can do. I think beat patrols is an easy thing that can be substituted for by Māori wardens, by hapai ake kind of community people walking around, which we have in Wellington, and I think they should focus on their core business.
Do you believe we should defund the police?
Altogether? I think there are some functions that the police are currently carrying out that other people would be better suited at. Mental health support and responding to people in significant distress is a big example. Our prisons are overcrowded and there are too many people in there that are serving short sentences for very minor things. I spoke to a woman last week in one of the 3 prisons that I visited last week, and she was in there for shoplifting $12 worth of items. Now that's $151,000 worth of taxpayer money going into locking someone up who couldn't afford to feed themselves. That's not justice, that's unfair. It's cracking down on people who have got no other means to survive. The heavier visual presence of police does not make people feel safer. It makes people feel more on edge because there are more police around.
Okay, well, Nick Minute, she can't actually back up the claim about the $12 theft, which is not surprising. So that was a New Zealand Herald just this afternoon. And this afternoon, Stuff reported that the agency, the social agency, never formally complained to her. So I don't want to call them liars, Simon, but it sounds like they're lying.
Oh, I'll call her a liar. She's a bald-faced liar across just a whole array of things. They do want to defund the police. They see it as some sort of colonial oversight. They hate prisons. They want to get rid of prisons altogether because before prisons in this country, there was somehow a utopia where no crime ever existed. And again, I'll just say it, she is lying. It doesn't matter if it's about what the police are doing on the beat or the fact that people don't like it. I've never met anyone who doesn't feel reassured by having the police on the beat. In fact, the police themselves appreciate it. It's a chance to engage. And the idea that somehow we could substitute them out for, what did she say, Maori wardens, is beyond laughable. So I'll just say this. There's only one group of people, Bob, who don't like the police, and they're called crooks. And so you can start to draw the dots between crooks and the Green Party, perhaps.
Okay, well, it's not the first thing that the Greens have said because Kahurangi Carter last year, of course, made this statement.
Ask yourself, would you rather be walking down a dark alley and see a patched member or a police officer? For many people in New Zealand, they would feel safer alone with a patched member than the police. And we need to ask ourselves why.
Yeah, so basically their argument is that police are intimidating and they scare people. And look, I think people have been crying out for police to be on the beat, and I think it's been one thing that's seen a decrease in crime in some of the major centres, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, as far as you can prove that correlation. But actually, people just do like to see police officers around. They're just citizens like us. So look, this is classic Green Party radicalism. I suppose what strikes me, because I'm a free speech advocate, they're allowed to speak these absurdities. What amazes me, Bob, is that any New Zealander votes for them. And remember, this is the Green Party who gets offended by the use of pronouns. Okay, so the idea that somehow they and others will be okay with patch gang members who by and large are very much involved with terrible crimes. These are people who get offended by pronoun use, let alone being attacked. And I think Mark Mitchell said it today, so the Minister of Police, and he's right. The Green Party and their supporters would be the first to call the police if something was going wrong in their homes or in their business. So they're slamming the very people that they'd be the first to call upon. They're just maddening.
Now, the interesting thing was, let me just play you this clip from Chris Hipkins, because, I mean, theoretically, the Labour Party are in cahoots with the Green... Nice cup, by the way. The Labour Party are in cahoots with the Green Party, and Chris Hipkins wasn't holding back on this. So I'm interested just to hear your interpretation of this from a political viewpoint, having been in Parliament. He's positioning himself slightly aloof of the Greens. Have a listen.
I live in Upper Hutt, regularly see the police walking down the main street of Upper Hutt, and I think that's a very positive thing. Speak to the shopkeepers there, they feel better when they see the police walking down the street. Speak to the people who are doing their shopping, they feel better when they see the police walking down the street. It doesn't just happen in the big cities, it happens all over New Zealand, and I think it's a very positive thing.
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's a bit of a rift there, but I guess that's not surprising, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, look, kudos to Chris Hipkins. In fact, everyone except the Greens spoke well. It's a big risk for Labour because the centre-right, be it National or ACT or New Zealand First strategy, will be to point out to voters for Labour to regain the Treasury benches to win. they need to work with the Greens and Te Pāti Māori to get the majority. And in other words, the Greens are doing a great job of scaring that moderate voter who goes, I'd like to vote for Labour, but if I do, we end up with the Green Party lunatics, let alone Te Pāti Māori.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you'll see, I suspect, I better say I'm speculating, I don't know, but expect the centre-right parties, New Zealand First, ACT, National, to be really hammering home the radicality of Te Pāti Māori and Greens and how they are tied to Labour. And so Hipkins clearly trying to create a bit of space there. And, that's not an unreasonable act by him, but it's still going to be hard to convince voters that he's not going to work with these guys.
Now, apologies for looking over to the side, but my comments are coming through on a side computer because I'm on the road. So, if you do want to comment through the
You're
Facebook
literally driving
page
as we speak, eh?
Yeah, I am. Excuse me, sorry. Oh, gee, was that a judder bar or a cone? So if you do want to comment, you can come through YouTube or through our Family First Facebook account. Look, there was one thing that Tamitha Paul did say that I totally agreed with. Let me just show you it.
Governments cause poverty. Politicians are criminals.
Did you hear that? Politicians
are criminals today.
Governments cause poverty. Politicians are criminals.
Yep, they're criminals, and that's Tamitha Paul pointing straight at that $12 theft and saying, go to prison. Look, it has been interesting with the Greens, but I think maybe they're starting to expose some of their core values. And was it Chloe going off about both companies that want to make a profit, shock horror, and also some very anti-Israel sentiments over the past week or so, hasn't she? So, and to be honest,
she's terrible on that stuff.
Actually, just do you want to comment on that? Because I do want to comment on something else about the Greens.
No, you go. I interrupted you.
Well, I was just going to say that Chloe was kind of the rebel in Parliament. She's not anymore. She's kind of the co-leader, and she's almost got to act responsibly, and it's just not her. And I don't think she's coping too well. You've got Tamitha Paul in the Greens, and you've got Hannah Rafferty, Maipi Clark in Te Pāti Māori. They're the young guns coming through. They're the kind of ones getting all the media attention because the media loves that kind of wackiness. And it's interesting just watching what's happening to Chloe. She's it's gone very quiet, hasn't it?
Yeah, she's struggling for the reasons you articulated. She's no longer the shiny new thing. And I'd add to that, Bob, she's no longer radical enough, despite what she thinks. She's stupid, and I'm sorry to say it so bluntly. I must be in a blunt mood this afternoon, but, stupid to make comments. Companies aren't meant to make a profit. I mean, honestly, you don't even have to have a degree in economics to know that just makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. Of course, she probably believes in a socialistic utopia. But she's just not as relevant anymore because there is a new breed of even more radical people. And this is the thing about revolutionaries, Bob. Without getting too historical or philosophical, there's always the next revolutionary. And that's why in the French Revolution and Russian revolutions, the first set of revolutionaries get taken out by the next set, and then the next set. And so that's Chloe.
Well, I just wanted to show you this clip because I did laugh out loud when I saw it. So Winston Peters was asked on the tiles, which is the area just before you walk into Parliament, isn't it? Where basically all the... Is it kind of like you're heading into Parliament and the media are all wait and you just pray and hope they're not going to come and surround you and ping you? Is that what happens?
Yeah, so the tiles is in the middle of the Parliamentary complex. It literally is black and white tiles, but it's an area the media are allowed to be in and allowed to intercept members of Parliament. So depending on whether you're having a good day or a bad day, you do or do not want to be interviewed by them. But that's where they're allowed to be, Bob, and important for viewers to understand. Journalists can't just come to your office or doorstop you anywhere else. So the tiles, that black and white space, is where they're allowed to be unless you specifically invite them.
They wanted to speak to Winston, and he was in a worse mood than you are, Simon, because you'll hear him. He starts by having a go at a stuff reporter for a unbalanced piece that he didn't like, and then he has a go at the NZME person beside him. Have a listen.
Could we just ask you a couple of questions about it?
No, sorry, mate. No. I read your last crap article. I'm not talking to you.
Hold on.
You decided to have an article. You wrote all about it, never even called me, and you think that's called balance. So see you, next guy.
What is your view on defunding the police?
Yeah, I'll ask her the same thing. What's your view on defunding the police after the...
Well, go and have a look at the budget. Our view is that we're not for anarchy.
What do you make of Tamitha Paul's comments about policing, about beat police?
Well, clearly she's for anarchy.
Would you want to work with the Greens when they're saying things like that?
Oh, don't ask a stupid question like that.
Well, it's not a stupid question. You've worked with them in the past.
No, excuse me, no. They never made it into the cabinet, did they?
No, but you were...
No, one more time, they never made it into the cabinet. Wait, I'm not listening to novices like you.
You were part of the government that's supported by a confidence.
It was his 80th birthday, wasn't it, recently? He's allowed to be a bit grumpy.
It's coming up, but it's very Trumpian, isn't it? It's just getting stuck into them. And I mean, he's obviously having a run-in with a number of them. I'm sure they love it just as much as he does, but he's given it to them.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. This is the paradox that you'd think, and maybe your viewers are going, gosh, why do the media not dislike him? They love it. There's sort of a love-hate dynamic, and they fuel each other. But to be fair on the journalist, and it's very Winston, he does dance on the head of a pin. You know, he was in a coalition form agreement with the Greens and Labour. Yep, they weren't in cabinet, but he was in cabinet because of the confidence and supply of the Greens. So don't get me wrong, there's wiggle room, and that's very Winston. He takes that slightest gap and he'll use it.
Yeah. Okay, let's check some comments because they have been coming through at 1,000 miles an hour. Wake 6 says, defunding the police has finally found our shores. It's been around a few other countries prior to this, and it's worsened crime, obviously. Rosie says the only people who have to worry about when the police are out and about are criminals. Innocent people have nothing to worry about. Anita says, was Tamitha Paul elected or is she a list MP? She's a list MP, isn't she? Or no, has she got the seat of Wellington Central?
Yeah, she was elected to Wellington Central.
Because she was previously a Wellington City Councillor, wasn't she?
She was, and then she headed up the Victoria University Students Association. Yeah. She's basically just been a political activist since probably she was born.
Yeah, career politician. Rosie says, I'd rather walk down the street and see a cop than a patched gang member. Ilu says, are those the same Maori wardens at police checkpoints during COVID lockdowns? No thanks. And Wilson says, makes a good point actually. Come on, Luxon, you need positive attention. Lead the charge on this gift Tamitha is handing you, which is true. I mean, if I was advising National right now, I'd be saying highlight the extremities and the wackiness of the alternative government. But yeah, I'm not sure if he is. Anyway, okay, let's continue. And next topic is the puberty blocker protest. So a whole lot of people marched in Wellington because they want to chemically castrate confused kids with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. Interestingly enough, when they put it on the New Zealand Herald and Radio New Zealand Facebook page, they didn't allow comments. And just to continue our Greens wackiness theme, this is what their newest MP had to say at that rally.
Interventions like puberty blockers and HRT are crucial to the well-being of the general population, trans and cisgender people alike. We know that access to surgery, therapy, mental health support and education for rainbow people is life-saving and therefore must be prioritised. That's why the Greens will increase funding for trans, reproductive and gender-affirming healthcare, decrease wait times for surgery, strengthen workforce development and capability and address discrimination in the healthcare system. Let's make HRT available to everybody who requires it and puberty blockers on demand. According to the...
Okay, that's enough. Puberty blockers on demand. Do you want to just comment about the actual rally? I mean, they've never covered the March for Life that I can remember, but hey, puberty blockers and the media are all down there.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. people have the right to protest even something as terrible as this. I mean, again, I'm in a blunt mood. This is just promoting child abuse. And you can say that with great certainty now when we look around the world at various jurisdictions who are pulling up sticks on this and saying, look, we're not doing this anymore. It doesn't matter if it's Sweden or the UK and a multitude of other countries, by the way, who are saying, hey, look, let's just dial things back. And here you have, as you say, this new Green MP and the few hundred that turned out saying not only should people get puberty blockers, but anyone who wants them. So cancer treatments, glue ear surgeries for little children or intervention. Oh, no. The priority is toxic drugs to stop puberty, to put young children onto the conveyor belt for, as you would know, Bob, cross-sex hormones, followed by surgery, with outcomes which are no better and often worse for those people. So the evidence is all against them. And so that's probably my other quick reflection is they're all for the science when it comes to climate change. If you ever put anything skeptical up about climate change, the Greens start screaming, follow the science. But not here, not when it comes to the abuse of children. And you're right, RNZ and others go running after them and provide no coverage for other important protests that are on.
But the interesting thing is that they won't allow any comments. So they want to push the narrative, but they're scared of having any open discussion on it. So they, on Facebook, they don't allow comment. The interesting thing, Simon, is that on X, Twitter, which is where they all were and where much media is, until Musk owned it, because they decided, no, they don't like Musk. Musk, bad man, badder than than Orange Man. But One News, New Zealand Herald recently, and One News stuff, and Radio New Zealand and the New Zealand Herald, so your four major media players are no longer posting to Twitter, which is now X. So, and they would say, oh, it's too toxic. But of course, here they are on Facebook and they're not allowing comments. And if you ask them why, they would say, well, it's too toxic. But the difference is they like the owner. They like Mark Zuckerberg, even though he sat next to, or he sat near Trump at the inauguration, didn't he? So he must be just hanging there. You know, if you really wanted to have some fun, Musk should buy Facebook. And then it would be really funny to see how they react. But I just find it fascinating that the media, the legacy media, will not go on to a platform where there is a huge amount of people just because they don't like the owner. I mean, it's kind of like, if you don't play the game the way I want to play it, I'm taking my toys and I'm going home.
Yeah, I'd say it's more than just the owner. I mean, they hate on Musk partly because, you know, he used to be a lefty liberal and he's converted, and they can't stand that. It's one of the reasons too the media keep promoting the damaging of Tesla vehicles. They're not actually reporting the news. They're trying to facilitate copycat behaviour. But no, I think it's worse than what you've described, if I might put it that way. It's just propaganda. It just confirms that it's not news, it's not reporting, it's propaganda. They don't want input from the general public. They just want to tell you what to think. So there will be no feedback. There will be no discussion. And, you know, the likes of Stuff have said, look, we're not going to engage on various views on climate change, on gender issues, on the treaty, an ever-growing list of comments they just will not tolerate. And you go, well, that's, again, not the role of the fourth estate. So they're not in that. They're not really media. They're just propagandists. And the fact that they're pulling out of X just proves it.
Okay, there was a couple of comments, some interesting comments here.
Yes, we take comments.
Nancy Margaret, yes, that's right, we do. Nancy Margaret says, how do these people get a following? Puberty blockers must have affected them badly. I'm in a blunt mood also. Well done, Nancy Margaret. Ben says that Green MP looks like a preacher in the religion of woke. And Catherine says, isn't HRT for menopause? And Rosie says, why is a crazy male going on about HRT? Men don't need it. My understanding is that HRT is part of the cross-sex hormones. So they basically facilitate. So the puberty blockers stops the natural process, and then the cross-sex hormones tries to chemically change you to the sex that you think that you are. It's just like you say, Simon, it's child abuse, it's experimentation.
It's also, this is a political trick that the progressive far left deploy often, which is conflation. So there is genuine issues for hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, for menopausal women. There's a supply problem. And so the Greens and these queer activists are trying to link into that and try to say, oh, look, well, our desire to have these HRT drugs for our cross-sex hormones is just the same as these women struggling with menopause. Now, it's not objectively or materially, but they're trying to conflate and bring those two issues together. The last quick point, and one of my viewers this morning, Bob, on Solid Ground pointed it out, and you might have it on the screen, the picture of the protest, including that Green MP wearing, I always forget what they call the Palestinian scarf. There's all these you see it there on the bottom right, the Palestinian flag and scarf. It's like, boy, those people protesting wouldn't last 5 minutes in Gaza. It's the one that you just had before of the forefront of Parliament. You'll see at the bottom right. But it's just a small, there it is, see by the statue on the right. So it's a small comment, but it's just the absurdity of this intersectionality.
Oh, there we are.
Just nuts.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, okay. Classic. Okay, there's not a lot of logic in the whole thing. Let's just talk about healthcare. And there was a disturbing story about the fact that we don't seem to have any trouble finding funding for euthanasia and having staffing for it. But for children facing terminal care, apparently we've got a sole specialist, and when the sole specialist goes on leave, that's it. I mean, that's a shocker, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sad at a number of levels, including, and I'm not sure how to phrase this, because not blaming those going into medicine, but we'd love to see more explore this space. Now, is it a supply or demand issue? In other words, is it that, doctors going through the system are not interested in this space? And how do we encourage them to be so? Or is there just not the opportunities? So I think it's exceptionally sad. I think there's only actually 2 centres in New Zealand, and only one of them's properly functioning. So I do know the minister's looking into this. He's been in public stating that, and I mean, it's an awful area. Obviously, to lose your loved one, but that's why it's so important, Bob, because also the paediatric palliative care specialists are caring for the wider family and the grief that comes afterwards. So a good contrast as the Green Party asks for, poisonous toxins for children versus this. I mean, I know which one I'd choose.
Yeah, I wish they'd have a protest for having palliative care funded. But no, they want to give puberty blockers and pretend that kids can change their biological sex. That's a very good point, actually. All right. Look, just while we're talking about the Minister of Health, so there were some accusations that he was muzzling members of the medical profession, that he was saying that they shouldn't be making submissions, that they had to get them approved. Is that what was happening? Because I saw some evidence, and I think you actually did a Substack on this, didn't you?
I did. I do write a Substack. Do you write a Substack, Bob?
Bit of advertising now. Yeah, what was your Substack on, Simon?
Short, there was... so it actually addressed this question because, big claims coming through mainstream media that doctors were being muzzled to talking about public health issues. And I have to say my first reaction was like, what? Oh, that's terrible. But when I delved into it, actually it's basically busy-bodied, ideologically driven doctors in the public health space opining on all sorts of issues that they don't need to. And what the minister was asking is actually when they do want to speak, with their capacity as doctors in the health system, they can say whatever they want as individuals, but if they're going to speak on behalf of Health New Zealand, that needs to go up the chain to national office. And the reason is, as the minister pointed out, there was like 8 pages trying to stop a McDonald's in Wanaka because of environmental concerns, treaty concerns, poverty concerns. Not once did they mention health or diabetes in terms of food quality. Doctors writing in about the danger of sandwich boards on sidewalks, and again, all populated with political rather than health issues. So I think it's appropriate of the minister, so long as it is just guardrails around what's said. If it got tighter, if it was controlling what doctors say overall, that would be a problem. But the minister's not doing that. He's just saying, keep to health. It doesn't have to be about climate change, doesn't have to be about intersectionality, doesn't be about a particular view of the Treaty of Waitangi. Stick to health.
Yeah, okay, we'll come back to that one. You just raised an interesting point just there. Rosie says, I'd love to see a man go through menopause without HRT. I'd love to see a man go through pregnancy without whining. And Sylvia says, women have to bear the brunt of hormone shortage, which actually I saw Sue made a comment about as well. Men require much higher doses. I've heard that claim made, but is there any truth to it that the reason there's a shortage of HRT is because of it being required for transgender requirements?
I haven't been able to corroborate that. I've heard that too. I think what you could say is that it still has an impact. If you only have a limited supply here in New Zealand, and even some of it is going to, gender affirming care, as I want to call it, that's not a good use of the very limited supplies. But whether it's the cause, I'm a bit sceptical myself, and I haven't seen enough evidence to prove it yet. Happy to have it, by the way. If viewers have some stuff, send it through to Bob and I. We'd love to see it.
All right. Winston did his State of the Nation speech on Sunday. Actually, I was pretty impressed because he'd just been over in the United States, and it's almost like he just got off the plane. So he is working some pretty serious hours. So I don't want to hear any complaining from you, Simon, because Winston's pulling it, and he's almost 80, if he is already 80. But he made a couple of interesting comments, and I just wanted to get your impression of this, because he spent most of the speech attacking Labour. And I'm wondering whether he's simply trying to get away from the accusation that, like in 2017, he could possibly go into coalition with Labour. So here's just a couple of clips.
Labour, Greens and the Maori Party now rely on ideological soundbites as a basis for their policy making, which, when given even a cursory glance, are totally bereft of any facts. They have become the parties of moral outrage, obsessed with accusations, gotcha politics, woke ideology, and opposing everything that happens to offend anyone that gets offended. The woke agenda of the left has crept in like a cancer that has spread so deep into their divisive thinking it has become their sole focus. And sadly, it is a malady, a malaise that has overcome most of the mainstream media. And that's why so few trust so many of them anymore. The Labour Party's focus is now on issues such as race, when we're all one people, as Fenner Cooper said. On DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever that means. Drumming up racial rhetoric that only serves to divide our country and ignores the vast majority of New Zealanders who just want a functioning health system, a top-class education for their kids, first world wages, and an affordable home. That's what all New Zealanders want, Maori and non-Maori, Ridis and non-Ridis, inside or outside. They don't want woke.
Okay, so he had a very supportive crowd. Just before you comment, he just made a list of the things that he thinks they've achieved.
New Zealand first set out in the election to get rid of the relationships and sexual education guidelines in our schools. And we have done that. We campaign on ensuring the pathway of separatism and cultural Marxism was stopped with the likes of He Puapua and co-governance, and we are doing just that. We campaign on ensuring we have fairness in women's sports. That men cannot compete against women and girls. And we have done that. But there is still much we need to do to continue the fight, including fighting against the use of puberty blockers for children.
All right, making all the right noises. Is the talk is also the walk with the talk? Do you think, Simon?
Well, starting with that, I mean that it doesn't quite equate. Don't get me wrong. New Zealand First has advocated quite strongly, as he mentioned. But take RSE in schools. Yeah, it's been withdrawn online, if you will, but we still know that teachers are using it, and there hasn't been a replacement yet. So I'm not trying to pour too much cold water over it, but I wouldn't be declaring full victory in these spaces. Men and women's sport, yes, they're re-looking at it. There's now a lens around fairness as much as diversity, but we still haven't seen the outcome. But I think what Winston's doing here is very Winston, and he's done it before, which he's want to do and right to do as a politician. He sees an avenue, and it is around this woke culture. He's seen overseas, doesn't matter if it's Italy, even the UK, US, certainly, there's a reaction, and he sees a way to stay in Parliament by being the champion. And he's trying to put a wedge in around Labour for two quick reasons. Yeah. One, that centrist Labour voter who goes, I don't like the fact that Chris Hipkins doesn't know what a woman is, or they'll go into coalition with the Greens. I'd prefer to vote for Winston because they can never bring themselves to vote National. And the other is he is just hinting again at that Labour Greens to Party Māori. They're all in that DEI woke, puberty blockers space. And so he's dog whistling into that somewhat aggressively. But it's a good strategy for him.
In fairness, I agree with you on the RSE because, I've actually done a McBlog saying, okay, it's been taken away, but there's a void, and look, what we get may be worse, and some schools are just carrying on with what they were doing, and there's still the Pride Week and all that type of stuff that they're promoting. But in fairness, it's only New Zealand First that are commenting on the RSE. It's only New Zealand First who are commenting on men and women's sports. They're the only ones actually raising the issue. I guess the point I'm getting at is that if you took New Zealand First out of Parliament, you wouldn't hear anything because you're not going to hear it from National or ACT, are you?
Oh, no, and it's not throwing bricks at them, as you say. They're the only ones who are speaking into this. It's just to temper, maybe that's the better word than cold war, just to temper. It's not finished yet. So maybe my encouragement to Winston is keep going, but you can't hang up the laurels just yet. There's still quite a bit to do. But again, he clearly, as does New Zealand First, that's my take, sees the political opportunity in pursuing this line. And not only will they be able to distinguish themselves from Labour, but also from National and ACT, who are, to be honest, not particularly conservative in any way on these issues.
Well, that's just it. They've basically been silent. They've been silent on the transgender. Chris Bishop says, we're reviewing it. But that's through Raelene Castle at Sport New Zealand, so that's an uphill battle. We're hearing nothing about puberty blockers yet, and we're not really even the DEI stuff. Actually, has National and ACT made any response to New Zealand First proposal to get rid of DEI and all that type of thing? They haven't, have they?
No, well, no, because they're compromised on it. You did a McBlog. Just to continue the advertising of Substacks and videos, but you did a McBlog around Chris Luxon's response to the mother concerned about, the gender indoctrination in schools, and he's committed to it. And then on the flip side, the ACT Party, one of their first things in power was to ensure that men could get female birth certificates and then just, go into changing rooms, sports and whatever. So, they're hugely compromised, and again, a reason why Winston, I think, feels he can distinguish himself in this space.
Okay, and speaking of that, we presented a petition last year on what is a woman, and 7 months on, we still haven't heard back. I actually wonder whether we need to send some woman to Parliament to explain to them what is a woman. But I noticed that in New Zealand First's latest little anti-woke promo that Shane Jones did, in fact, I won't tell you what it shows. Let me just show you.
Half of the politicians in the left wing now can't even answer what is a woman. Our leader is absolutely exploding.
Oh, who's that guy on the right?
Vainglorious self-promotion.
Definitely not a woman. Anyway, I'm going to send a bill to New Zealand First for using our footage. Anyway, they're welcome to. We'll get the message through. All right, what are we up to? Oh, we're up, yeah, very interesting story. The atheist who published a story saying that churches shouldn't be taxed. Why is that?
Well, basically, she points out that churches do something like $6.1 billion of good. This was back in 2018. So over the course of a year, a massive contribution to the economy, but importantly, to actually the most in need in the economy. And saying that actually if you start taxing them, you start taxing this profit or income of the churches, you're going to reduce how much money is going to support the most vulnerable, the homeless, the widows, all of this sort of carry on. And so she's making a basic point, which is the absolutely correct point, that every dollar the government takes away from churches and from charities is money that is not going to help the most vulnerable in our communities. So it's a simple point, but actually her and I sat down, and I'm afraid it's not through our networks here, but people can access it. I've got an interview with her, which people can find on our social media in the coming days, where we really just tease this out a bit more. But she argues at the end of the day, Bob, that the churches need more space to operate, not to be restricted.
Okay, good message. Very important public service announcement. Pete says, have you guys turned the sound down? I've got my computer at full volume and can hardly hear what you're saying. So if anybody else is having that same problem, let us know. But apparently it's all good. Nobody else has complained. So Pete, it might be the computer. Maybe wiggle the cord at the back, or yeah. We'll speak a bit louder. All right, let's keep on going. Boundary changes. So what we have is, here's this nice little visual that I stole off One News. So Ohariu and Mana and Otaki are being combined, are being combined into two electorates, Kiripuru and Kapiti. So that affects 3 MPs. They've only got 2 seats. So is it that nobody's living in this area? I mean, it's a beautiful area, the Kapiti Coast. So what's going on here?
I'll try to keep it simple, because it sort of is and it isn't. Long and short, it's the population of the South Island divided by 16. And that then gives you the size of each electorate. So in this case, actually, there's more people in the South Island. And so the number of people per electorate is slightly larger. And then it does have an effect of how many people are in those areas. And they've been under for a little while. So from what I can see, it makes sense to combine it to 2, but you've nailed it. There are 3 sitting MPs for 2 seats. One will stay, the Kapiti seat will stay blue. I would pick that Tim Costley from National, who holds Otaki, will keep that. Mana is Barbara Edmond, so Labour's number 2, effectively. She's the finance spokesperson, and Haru by Greg O'Connor. No relation, although got on with him well. My pick, Bob, you heard it here first, he'll be pushed out. He'll be told it's time to retire, because they're not going to let Barbara hang out to dry.
I mean, Ohariu Belmont, that has, it used to be Ohariu Belmont. That was Peter Dunn's old seat. That was the seat that everybody watched, because Peter Dunn propped up the government because he was a one-man band. He won the seat, but his party went from hero to zero over a few elections. Good news. Peter's sound is better, so that wiggle of the cord at the back sorted it out.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, but I just thought that's a massive area. The interesting thing I found was that some MPs must be doing incredible mileage. I mean, I was brought up and lived in Auckland, so the electorates are far more defined, and you can sort of get from one end to the other in 30 minutes, depending on peak hour traffic. Whereas in some electorates, you must be travelling for 3 or 4 or 5 hours just to get from one end to the other.
Oh, yeah, and the Kapiti electorate you've got there is not the biggest by any means. The big ones are like the Rangatiki, so that's all the way through the likes of Tikawiti, Taumarunui, all the way down to actually the border of Kapiti. So I think sort of Levin or Bulls and Sanson, to be completely correct. The South Island, the Southland and what do they call it now? Clutha. So where Queenstown is. I mean, massive electorates. Yeah. It's a flip side though, Bob. When you're in a small electorate like here in Auckland, people expect to see you all and everywhere. Whereas when you're in the bigger electorates, they're more accepting that, okay, well, you're not here because clearly you're like 10 hours away. But there's a flip side of the travel times. But yeah, it's a big ask. And actually, importantly, the MPs and what they know is large electorates get a little bit more funding, not pay, but their officers get a bit more funding so that they can obviously have a bit more presence in the area. So that's a good step balance.
You sort of can't do the morning meeting, the afternoon meeting, and the evening meeting when you're in one of those big electorates. It's one meeting per day. I still wish that in our system we increase the number of electorates, so direct representation of an electorate, and decrease these list MPs. I'd rather see it 90-30 rather than what it is at the moment. So, yeah, but I probably won't get my way. All right, let's keep going. Lunches gone very quiet on lunches. I mean, Radio New Zealand were doing an average of about 3 stories every day, and now all they can find is a petition against the horrible, disgusting and inedible school lunches. And I had a look. It only had about 3,000 signatures. They want to get to 1 million signatures. I should have a look actually and see where it's at. But yeah, it's all. I always fascinated which petitions the media covers because they never advertise our ones. And this petition was interesting. You had a look at the wording of it. Interesting wording, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, like the protest, people are allowed to put in petitions. My feeling is that the lunch story is sort of played out, unless there's some really new, I don't know, scandal or scandalous in inverted commas, sort of run out of steam. But what struck me with the wording of this is that the petitioner has put it all within a te ao Māori framework. So trying to cloak it with a respectability based around that. But speaking around, it's all about care, manaki, and it's care for our loved ones. And you go, well, that's interesting because surely you, the petitioner, should be looking after your young ones and not expecting the state to do it. So I just thought it was all a bit, warped for want of a better term, Bob. So yeah, the petitioner is saying it's all about care. It's a big part of our te ao Māori approach. And yet I, the petitioner, will not care for the children. I expect someone else to do it. So I just thought it was stupid.
Good news is that it's only up to 5,500, so it really hasn't taken off. That's going to be a bit embarrassing. I thought Seymour, his response was very good because he said, well, Radio New Zealand are reporting on the petition, but they aren't too keen to report that apparently last week the School Lunch Collective delivered 99.8% on-time delivery and meal production rates have increased. So we don't get those good news stories. This was really a campaign, but it has gone really quiet, hasn't it? And it's almost as though kids are getting fed, and so suddenly the media, oh, gee, that's just not interesting enough.
Yeah, it's not convenient to their narrative. So yeah, I mean, but this is the cycle that you and I have observed for many years through obviously your leadership at Family First, my time in Parliament. The media chooses the stories, so they choose this petition over that petition, and they'll prosecute it for as long as it's useful. And yeah, they'll just keep hammering the lunches and they'll ignore the facts on the ground. The fact that actually someone fell over, was it Labelle Group? Not a good look, but somehow the process has continued. They're not talking about that. No.
Okay, last story, just very quickly, and I just wanted to cover this because this is covered in the Centrist, and it's because Auckland Uni is my university. It's where I got my master's degree, but to be honest, I'm a little bit embarrassed by the direction they're heading. I'm embarrassed about the way they treated those academics who wrote that letter and then got targeted for having a view on certain issues. And I'm embarrassed because their criminology department employed a person who tweeted that he wanted to effing cut me up, me personally. So Auckland University embarrasses me, but Graham Adams, who's a very good commentator on the Centrist, says Auckland University has a death wish. Are you understand what's going on here?
I do. I read it this morning. I don't know if you want to elaborate on it or.
If you wouldn't mind, thank you very much. my blood pressure went up.
Long and short. All right. Long and short, he's referencing a compulsory tikanga course which the university is introducing. For all first-year students, doesn't matter if they're here or international, and it's all around Maori culture, Maori tikanga, a very particular view of the Treaty of Waitangi, Maori gods, Maori spirituality, and it's dividing people. Should this be compulsory? The answer, in my view, is no. No university should really have anything compulsory. It's meant to be the place of ideas.
So can I just clarify that?
Can
I clarify that every student who goes to Auckland University in their first year, they have to sit this course. They have to sit the course.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's effectively at gunpoint. You have to do it. And Graham's point is already Auckland Uni is slipping down the ranks. There's disquiet within the academic faculty that they're not allowed to speak and debate in certain topics, again, around the treaty, gender, climate change. And now they are entrenching this compulsory course, which, again, you could imagine if you wanted to be generous, there is space to talk about New Zealand's history, but that's not what it's about. It's about indoctrination around the treaty. It's only got religious indoctrination. Christians may find it quite difficult where they are going to have to engage in matters of Maori spirituality and gods. Now, I better be clear, I don't know whether they're going to be asked to invoke them or whatever. Maybe it's just a discussion, but it's been enforced onto people. And by the way, they pay for it, including international students, which is why I mentioned it earlier. So people from China and India, they don't need to know. It makes no difference. But boy, they're going to stump up thousands of dollars for basically propaganda because it's been led by propagandists in the university. They are not objective. They are highly, highly compromised when it comes to matters political.
All right, look at that. We're out of time. That's a great discussion. Now, one very exciting thing, Simon, is that you've decided to get up early 2 mornings a week. So every morning at 7:30, you either get me doing Daybreak or you doing Solid Ground. So nobody can avoid us at 7:30. You just got to figure out which mug's going to appear on the screen. So that's very exciting development. So basically a more brief overview from me and the in-depth analysis with Simon because he's far brighter and has a higher IQ. Is that right? Something like that.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Okay, so I'll be here tomorrow morning at 7:30 with Daybreak, and we'll be back Monday night with Straight Talk. Actually, one of the topics for Straight Talk on Monday night, Simon, is we're going because you're on the panel, I think, aren't you? We're going to talk about what is a woman, just to help Parliament deal with that tricky petition that we presented to define woman in policy. So I've asked all the panellists, Peter Williams and Bruce Logan and Simon and I think it was the other, I can't remember the other one, I think it was Alfred maybe, to go away and do some research as to what is a woman. So maybe tonight you can have a bit of a chat to Rachel and be prepared for Monday night.
I'll have a chat to Rachel, my stepchildren, my mum, my sister, a few others, all my friends who are girls rather than girlfriends. Let's make sure that distinction is correct.
Okay, that's it. We better stop where we are. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back next Thursday night at 5 o'clock for Political Playback. Have a great night.